Welcome to Tell the Story, the podcast that's redefining what it means to thrive after a life of service. I'm Doug White, a veteran, retired first responder, and author of Hiding in Plain Sight, the truth about trauma, service, and the way forward. This isn't just another podcast about service. It's about what comes next, how veterans, first responders, and their families move beyond the challenges, own their journeys, and build a future of strength, purpose, and growth. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. It's a space to connect through unscripted conversations where we bring you hard-earned insights, actionable strategies, and inspire you to do the hard work so you can show up as the best version of yourself for your family, for your community, and your mission. This episode is brought to you by Polestar Coffee, fueling the brave with the finest blends, crafted for those who push boundaries every day. Check them out at polestarcoffee.com. Before we dive in, I want to remind you to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs it. Your support helps us grow and expand these conversations and reach the people who need them the most. Today's guest is Matt Davis, a rising voice in leadership development with over 14 years of law enforcement experience. Matt has dedicated his life to fostering emotional intelligence and adaptability in high-trust environments. His personal journey has refined his approach to leadership and life. In this episode, we'll explore Matt's transformation, his leadership philosophy, and how he helps others unearth true boldness within. Matt, welcome to Tell the Story. All right, and we are live.
All right.
Welcome back, Matt Davis, to Tell the Story. This is round number 2. I think you're my second. No, wait a second. You're my third returning guest.
All right.
I did one yesterday, and I never thought I would do this or get to a point where I'd want to talk to people again. But the other two, just like you, and the reason I wanted to talk to you about everything today is because they started off on their mission. Hey, I'm kind of doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, hey man, I get behind that. That's good stuff. And they were like kind of like dipping the toe in the water. You know, it's okay, it's warm enough. And they went from sitting on the side of the pool with a toe dangling in the water to, you know what, I'm just going to go to the deep end. I'm taking off the floaties and whatever, bro, I'm going in. And it's been like complete 180-degree shift for the other two. Would be Nick O'Kelly and Thad King. Nick's came out last week. Thad's is on YouTube today, but will be coming out on the 17th when I get back, and yours will be following his. But this will make sense when people are listening to this in 2 or 3 weeks. But I'm just amazed at watching everybody's journey, and I think that has been the best thing about doing what I'm doing now. And you've probably experienced the same thing, but just kind of connecting with people, not collecting, but connecting, and just authentically, and kind of just, I mentioned it with Eric Tung a couple of weeks ago. You know, I'm just grateful to have a ticket to the dance, you know, just to be able to be there, to watch everybody else growing and being successful. And you certainly, whether it was building into the FBI LEDA or you found it after LEDA, or if it's what you talked about the first time when we spoke, that you're working on things. And I wake up one morning and here it all is, man. True Bold is a thing now, and Believe is a bigger thing. And Matt Davis Speaks is this whole thing. And I wake up this morning and I'm scrolling through the phone, still laying my lazy ass in bed. And I see this new article you posted just today. And I've already commented on it, reposted it. And you generally 9.5 times out of 10, when I see something you post, it's something that I have to comment on after I don't even have to sit with it. I'm like reading it with my head bobbing. Yep. And sometimes I get a little too long-winded, like right now. And I have to repost it with my own thoughts because LinkedIn doesn't give me enough space to comment. So anyway, enough of me just running my mouth. Man, the changes that you've gone through, what is going on in the life of Matt Davis? And please start with the wedding.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to say thanks for having me on again.
No.
You know, I think our relationship just continues to grow, and I love seeing what you're doing. And you know, I always like watching your podcast and the guests that you have on, and the special ops people that you have on, and your continued talking about imposter syndrome and being open about that is so amazing to me. It's inspiring to me because I think more people need to be talking about that, because we all have a little bit of that at some point in our career, or sometime, you know, even if we're not entrepreneurs like you and I are, just sharing our story. We can't tell our story wrong. You know, we cannot tell it. I say that every time before I go out to talk to any group is I can't not tell my story wrong. And I encourage other people to do that. But with that also comes my story. Sometimes I don't share it for free, and that's a struggle that we all have as entrepreneurs to talk about that. Thanks for reading the article this morning. That's a lot of hard work. Like I'm just coming up to in just a few weeks in August, I'll be graduating with my undergrad, and then I'm in the throes of my master's program now, and I'm working on a capstone project. And that capstone project is talking about trust and transformational leadership and how that really is something I think that's a crossover, not just from law enforcement, first responder community, military community, but it's a crossover to um, all the organizations out there, because there has been a huge change. There's been a huge shift since COVID-19 and the lockdown and the great resignation. And there's a ton of research about that out there. And me as being able to, as a scholar and a researcher out there looking at those things, I really want to be able to communicate that in a way where people that don't want to read those research articles that I have to read, I just want to break it down real easily so somebody can take it in if they're a new sergeant, if they're a new lieutenant, if they're even an FTO or a DTO, that they can go ahead and take that information and use it right then and there with the people right there in front of them. But mostly I want people to understand trusting yourself is a huge thing. And my mental health journey has really, I had to start from ground zero of really creating a list like we talked about last time, and then just sort of ticking things off the list and trusting myself where I could make good decisions. And those decisions weren't going to continue to feed into the toxicity that I had going on in my life. Thanks again for mentioning that through that journey. And I put a post out on Monday about it. I'm very excited. I got remarried on on Sunday, and that was really great. And I have a really amazing partner, and a lot of the things that you see me doing would totally not be able to happen if I didn't have that. And you talk about your wife a lot and in your relationship and how that has really helped you, and that has really helped me over the last 2 years to be able to really get going. Because once and I don't think a lot of people talk about this. Once you really, there's a lot of effort when you're out there trying to find love or trying to love yourself better and find that person that you want to be with. And once I was able to find that, I was able to rechannel my energy in other places. And that's what you see when you see me out doing Matt Davis Speaks or True Bold, or just in my one-on-one relationships with people that I'm proud to call friends.
Well, congratulations, you found it. I
Yes.
mean, it's absolutely true to anybody, or clear to anybody watching. You certainly found it. There's a lot of things in what you just said that I want to unpack, and I want to go back real quick to the article and just say for those of you who haven't read it, of course, it's by the time this airs, it'll be out for a couple of weeks. It's the May 30th article. When I read it, I knew that you were starting your master's program or had been accepted, and I didn't know how far into that. But it doesn't read as an academic paper. It reads as it is, based in research, clearly, but it is so much of your own voice and your own personal experience mixed in with that. You do a very good job of showing this is how I know,
Mhm.
and this is how it relates to corporate world, and this is the research behind that. You found it by accident. Well, not by accident, but through going through it and learning that's not the way to do this. And maybe if I just spend a little time to develop myself and see what's out there. So the article reads very well. It's very informative. In fact, I had to read it 3 times just to soak everything in because again, my head's nodding. Yes, 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 that's it. And you know what? I've got all these notes written down because you've done so much since the last time we spoke. And hell, we were on the phone together, what,
Yeah.
a week ago?
I think it was a
And
couple weeks ago.
yeah, it was a week before the wedding.
Yes.
That's right, because I wanted to leave you alone the week before the wedding. So 2 weeks ago we spoke, and I've got a page full of notes of things that I just wanted to talk about since the last time we just babbled on the phone together. And I just wanted this to happen, but your article threw me off this morning. It really
All right.
did. And
Well,
since we're already talking about it, you said in the article the current crisis in recruitment and retention isn't about pay, public scrutiny, or even dangerous work conditions. It's about broken trust. And man, that is incredible because that's true. I've been talking to my wife about that in her own work, the corporate world that, when you treat people and you made the comment that when you treat people like interchangeable parts or tools, morale is going to suffer. So, what are your thoughts on building that kind of trust? I mean, what's necessary? And I don't want to lead you, so I'm going to let you talk because I have my own opinions on that. I just want to see where you're at.
For me, it's that starts with that self-reflection, Doug. It starts with that self-reflection of, am I leading myself well? Like me as Matt Davis, am I leading myself well? And also, do I have that clearly established why? I always come back to that. Like I hope people are able to look at actually go to the end of the article and look at all the references because there's
Mhm.
a lot of good books as well as scholarly research that I cite in there. And really, it comes down to, hey, are you going to be? We were all there. We've all sat on the other side. We all have a long list of people that for me, I never wanted to become a supervisor until I was standing out on a critical incident and I figured out that people died at that scene because of poor leadership, because that person was not able to make a decision and tell the people that he supervised, this is probably not the best course of action. And people got killed and shot and permanently disabled because of that. And after being on that scene and helping with that investigation, I just looked at my supervisor and I said, what's it going to take for me to become a sergeant? Because I want to make sure that incident never happens again. Because I had never wanted to be, but I was putting a lot of effort toward, I wanted to be a task force officer. Like that's what I wanted to be. I wanted my creds and be able to, flip open my DEA credentials or whatever. That's really what I was going toward until that incident happened. And then I'm like, uh, I need to supervise. Then, COVID comes along once I was a supervisor, and that's a whole different deal, whole different deal. Because I didn't know from call to call to call if I was sending. I mean, at that time, I was sending people into could be mortal danger every time you're handling a person on the street. And the big thing about the article is you got to build trust with yourself. You got to feel good about your skills as a leader. And like we talked about before, I rewatched our episode yesterday just to sort of take some notes down and see what we had talked about before. We were having that conversation about renewing your education and staying current on that. And I know from our conversations, you and your wife are avid readers of a lot of great leadership books. We talked
Mhm.
about the Let Them theory, Brown's theory, all her books, Simon Sinek, all these people that bring it down to earth for people to understand. But there's still people. I talked to a bunch of college professors in Arizona, and when I was talking to them, a lot of them, because I like to give away books during my presentation, and a lot of them did not know. Like I'm like, hey, who in the room has read Simon Sinek? I get blank stares. Who's read Brene Brown? I get
Really?
blank stares. Yes. So you and I live in that space
Yeah.
and we're ingesting that on a daily basis and we're searching that stuff out. A lot of leaders they're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And right now, what I'm hearing from everybody I know that's in the public space is they're getting told on mostly a weekly basis that their budgets are drastically changing from month to month for next year. They just released a story here today about how most of the counties in Colorado have been identified as sanctuary counties. So we're going to be losing most of our federal funding for next year, and except for a handful of counties within the state. So there is a lot of funding issues going on, and it's not just law enforcement, first responder community. It's also, it's mental health,
Mhm.
it's housing, it's your public libraries, all places that people use. And I get concerned about libraries because when you start looking at libraries, that's where people go to hopefully check out books. I have a great library behind me. Sorry, I'll point this way, but I like checking out books. I like doing it online. I know people think a lot of times the library is just going to go online, but there are a lot of programs and a lot of things that are happening within the walls of the library. And it's an area for your community to really come together
Mhm.
and be a meeting place. It's not like what we grew up in where we got to go and search the stacks for the magazines that we're looking for. It really is in a modern library, it's much different. So seeing those things get cut back in funding and also like museums and different things that are happening. There's a lot of things that are happening right now, which, I don't want to get into politics, but it's causing stress on us public employees out there because we don't know if we're going to have jobs. We need to be investing in developing ourselves and developing the people that that are our teammates. And that looks much differently from team to team. And we need to be able to take the time to do that. And that's one of the things I talk about in the article,
Mhm.
of just being able to do that. And one of the things in the article is there's already research that was done in 2017 range where they're actually looking at the neuroscience of what trust does and what the neuro responses are to high trust environments. And
Yeah.
that's really pivotal for people to understand. Like, this is not just something, I think a lot of people in law enforcement think, well, we got all these soft Gen Zs coming in, so we're having to like water this thing down. No, what's been happening is we've been mistreated in law
Yeah.
enforcement for we're the mistreated person. We've been mistreated. Our leadership acceleration has not even matched what the military is doing. And you go to these things where you're talking to military people all the time, and their processes have changed.
Oh yeah, yeah. First responder world, we're at least 8 to 10 years behind what Department of Defense is doing. Certainly, you mentioned the neuroscience behind it and the oxytocin, and in the article, and that the neuroscience has shown that people who feel safe and valued and who can see their contributions to organizations are better workers. And I hear that from my wife when she comes home from work. The team that she has built, and at her office and within her organization is completely different than what it was when she came in there years ago, and has been. They meet their metrics every quarter, every month. They're on time every time. And that's something that didn't happen for the 27 years of the company's existence before she got there.
Mhm.
And it's because she leads that way. She reaches to them and says, what is it that you need from me to make you successful at your job? And you mentioned something about that in your article, that in 2018, when you became a sergeant, you felt that being a good investigator was ultimately going to make you a good leader in that space. And you found a gap. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, me too. I felt, because being on scene for a tactical problem, these things were intuitive to me. Orchestrating chaos was the easiest thing in the world. So going to these scenes as a leader is going to be easy. Yes. However, the aftermath of that, when you're not dealing with those things, learning every person's motivations, learning that their families' names, contributing to their lives. And that was the point that I wanted to bring up, that, COVID-19, you mentioned it when the pandemic hit, people were, started working remote. They didn't have that face-to-face connection with each other. At the sheriff's office, we only went to the obligatory calls for service. If it wasn't an in progress, like part one crime, our web-based reporting took off then out of necessity.
Mhm.
And we weren't dealing with a lot of people face to face. Traffic stops were almost a non thing unless it was egregious. So you start having that disconnection, and it affects people. To that point, the disconnection between your leadership, and I say leadership is an over encompassing, let's call them executive level, people in positional authority, whatever the case is. But leadership, I think that when they are, to your point, going meeting to meeting to meeting, they're concerned with the business of running a first responder organization.
Mhm.
And I get that. Business has to take place. You have to be worried about budgets and all those other things. But if you provide your people the things that they need, and you're concerned with what your personnel need before the needs of the needs of the community will take care of themselves. When you build that organizational trust and that value.
Mhm.
I saw something the other day that said your organizational culture is not what you put on your website. It's how your people feel on a Sunday night. And
Yes.
I felt that. I was like, bro, that's it. Climate survey, ask your people, hey, do you get nauseous on a Sunday night? And the
Right.
answer is yes. You need to look in the mirror, not out the window, and you need to fix what's going on in your organization. And I think a lot of people in leadership positions, and you know, 800,000 cops, 18,000 law enforcement agencies, there are good ones out there. But I think when people get to a management position, they get so in the weeds about the business of the organization. They forget about the people who really matter. They forget that, yes, I may be paying you for 12 or 24 hours, but there's 12 hours or 48 or 72 hours if you're a firefighter that I'm not paying you for, that you're living a life. And those things impact one another.
Well,
So
I think that's part of the article that I really was excited to share with people, because I think that I think trust, they don't believe there are metrics around it, and that there clearly are.
Mhm.
And even in my own experience, I started with that calling in sick, because that's the number one thing. If you think of as working a line position in any organization. I don't care if you're working at a call center or you're working the road in, in wherever United States city or county that you're in. You choose, if you have that feeling on Sunday night and you just pick up the phone and say, I'm calling in sick, that's avoidance. That's like, hey, I'm avoiding either I see that there's only one, all my supervisors I like that week are on vacation. So I'm going to try to find a reason to be on out,
Yeah.
or I'm going to schedule a training that week or that kind of thing. Nobody, like, you're not keeping it a secret. Everybody knows. Everybody knows because, we bid for one team every year most of the time, and people are bidding supervisors. It's very
Right.
clear.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is if you are command person and you're like, hey, Matt, every year Matt's team fills up last.
Yeah. No, and
Why
people
are
are aware. It's
right?
glaring.
It's you're well aware of what's going on. And I had listed some of those things, and calling to avoid calling sick, transferring, like people like to transfer teams. Everybody is a problem. I've had that happen in my career as lieutenant. People are I treat like everybody like an adult, but if you go to a team where you get micromanaged, then you might be in internal affairs having to deal with issues. This is the one that I really had been thinking about, is the new Gen Z cop, or the new police officer, law enforcement officer coming in. They get this bad reputation with supervisors because supervisors think that you need to mold yourself into that police officer mold, and so they get bad first impressions. And then what ends up happening is you're sitting in a lieutenant's meeting, you're sitting in a sergeant's meeting, and it's, new deputy one, they're a nice enough person. They handle calls for service fine, but, they want to sit there and talk to people too long. They want to talk to victims too long. They want to talk to people going back to their car. Hey, they want to get out of their car and like walk around and talk to people. They're too educated. I hear this all the time. Too
I've heard that.
educated.
Yeah.
They're too educated. They come to law enforcement for the wrong reasons. I will tell you, I would love to take a whole team of
What does that
people.
even mean?
Most of the time I hear it around the civil unrest. They came to law enforcement because they wanted good people to be in law enforcement. And they talk about George Floyd and the different things like that. And they're like, and comes from a lot of people of color that I've been able to speak with, that come to law enforcement in the last 5 years. They come because of that reason, because they want good people in law enforcement. And what happens is that old grizzled sergeant is like, they're not here to arrest people. They're here to, hug a thug or whatever thing they want to say. They're too they're community relations people. You know what? How many times have you just been talking to somebody and somebody's confessed to a crime? I've had that happen to me, or you talk to somebody and they're like, hey, such and such is going on 3 houses down, because you're building trust with the community. Like, that's the other thing we're not doing. If you look at law enforcement, there are a lot of agencies that are doing a good job, but we had the chance, coming out of COVID and coming out of the civil unrest and all the police accountability things, to really be more out there in the communities, and we sort of sunk back down. And we put a lot of focus in on, these politicians are going to carry the flag for us. No, our communities want to hear directly from us.
Yeah.
I think about what the Ferguson chief, when they had that issue with their officer earlier or late last year, and they had some civil unrest, and he got right in front of the press and are like, hey, we changed everything. We hired new officers. We changed the uniform. We changed the patch. We've done everything that we need to do. And these people that come to our community to act out are not from our community. So when is our community going to, protect, going to come up and be our biggest supporters? And I think that's what you and I do, is we want people speaking about you and I in rooms where we're not there.
Yeah. Positively.
Positively, correct. And I think that's the thing that all of us in law enforcement want our neighbors to be speaking well about us as a community. Our community coming up and telling the reporter that's outside the police station that, hey, we like what's going on in our community, because it should be like that. Like, we should be a reflection of the community that we serve. The other thing is the promotion. So you've got the sick calls, you've got transfers, you've got, getting the wrong impression, second guessing, body worn camera, second guessing. Any of the research that you look at, and I would tell you that probably most of your non-law enforcement people that listen to this podcast would not want to wear a body worn camera 24/7 of their job,
Oh, yeah.
24/7, 365.
Mhm.
The camera will catch things that my brain doesn't catch.
Yes.
And that how long it takes to get to my brain to get to my hands to be able to do whatever I'm doing. There's a lot of things that are going on in my brain, and I get you can get tunnel vision. You can, there's neuroscience behind that.
Oh yeah. No, it's been well founded for decades.
Yeah. And the other thing is this whole thing of officers being dishonest. If somebody gets brought into an office and you get confronted by something, what's your first thing to do? You've interrogated plenty of people in your career.
Oh, the
What
first human thing is either deny or minimize.
Correct. So if I do either one of those in law enforcement and the person sitting across the table from me does not like me or thinks I need to get taught a lesson, then it gets really hard.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, I hear stories from all over the country about people and organizations that make some interesting calls when it comes to that. And, it could be as simple as parking in the wrong parking spot in the parking lot that people end up getting a Brady letter over.
It's
Okay.
it's funny that you actually mentioned that because I said years ago when I was teaching FTO class that you could mess up on a call and they'll never know your name, but if you park in their parking space, you may as well hang yourself from their ceiling fan because your career is done. I mean,
Hmm.
it's that petty. No, it's amazing, and just on the body camera thing, there's been a couple of deputies here lately that have been punished because they used a tone of voice that a supervisor much later in the comfort of an air-conditioned office, saw the video and said, I don't like that. So you're gonna get punished. I mean, like full on administrative inquiry and everything. But when the body cameras, we were like one of the last in Florida to get them. I mean, our former sheriff and staff, they really held out because they said, we trust our people.
Hmm.
The community trust our people. And here, in my organization, we, for whatever reason, we have always enjoyed a good working relationship with our community in the way because of the way that we do police. We know that we work for an elected official, and our commission card says that we're employed under their term.
Hmm.
Well, if I want my boss to stay employed, I'm going to make sure my boss and my organization looks good. So we are very fair. We deal with people. And during the unrest of 2020, there were problems within the inner city, but in the unincorporated county, somebody set a dumpster on fire and rolled it into the middle of the street.
Right.
That was it. And
Hmm.
we're a big county.
Right.
So, I mean, we enjoy those things. So when the body camera came out, everybody, of course, said, no, Big Brother, this and that, is the light, amber? Is it purple? What is it? Are they watching me? Take my camera off. And I'm not going to take it to my house to charge it and download it. I mean, all of these things. And to combat that, they said, the body worn cameras are for one, accountability. So if somebody says you did do something, we can show unequivocally that you did not. So this is here to save you. And
Hmm.
also is for us to review to make sure that we can find any training deficiencies.
Right.
Okay, so if I tell you, that's not this crime, here's my business card. Oh no, that is a crime. Why did you not think that? Oh, because of this. Okay, well, there's a training deficiency. Here's the statute. Those things. Very simple,
Correct.
very innocuous. And they're, nationwide, these have saved more officers, from frivolous complaints.
Hmm.
Okay, so now we're behind it. But wait a second. You get asked up one day because you either don't like me or because, you got a complaint 6 months ago on me. Now you start to review my stuff and you don't like my tone or you don't like the way that I parked my car or the way that I said something on a call. And next thing you know, I'm being brought in for unprofessionalism. And instead of saying, now this is the leadership thing, one, doing that to somebody is kind of a shit thing to do anyway. But the leadership thing is, hey man, 6 months ago, you acted this way. And we talked about this. And here we are 6 months later, you've done it again. Nothing in between those 6 months. Instead of saying, what's going on in the last 6 months or what's going on in life now to make you react that quickly or that sharply or to speak to a person that way? If it's warranted, yes, there are some people out there that only understand curt and direct language.
Yes.
But if it's not warranted, my question then to you is, what's going on with you?
Well, that goes to the thing of ghost supervision, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we lie in wait for these people
Oh, yeah.
to
Yeah, they
to
sit
to
in
screw
the
up,
tall grass. Yeah.
right? And instead of we should just be taking care of that at the time. Like if
Mhm.
we hear something, like because we've always been, all of us, we're not at the top of our game every day we go to work.
No, nobody is.
Nobody is, but we're being recorded. Like, you can even edit this. We can never edit body worn camera. Like, if you're an ass, you're just an
Yeah.
ass, from that standpoint. And you really have to think about that as a leader. Like, these are all symptoms to the larger problem. And the larger problem is that person's not doing a good job of leading themselves.
Mhm.
So they put themselves in bad situations. And how can we talk about that? Like, how can we really talk about that? One of the things I thought of when we're just talking here, because I think community members don't really see what we really do from a problem solving standpoint. But like during COVID and during the unrest, there were a lot of, you talked about not responding to certain calls for service. And we had an affluent neighborhood that was gated, and it was like 30, 40 houses. But they actually had patrols in there. Their neighbors took up patrols, and they were like walking around with AR-15s during the thing. Okay, because they knew that we were not going to respond. And so those communities that community, one of their walls backed up to a light industrial area, and it was a dead end street. And some kids had created a skateboard ramp, like a half pipe out there.
Mhm.
And we were getting complaints all the time about this half pipe. And what happens is it comes to a head where they call out there and they're like, we got people, like we're out here with guns, like everybody's calling. And I got out there with some deputies when I was a sergeant, and we just start talking to the people. Well, the kids were going to a treatment facility that was in the light industrial area. And on their breaks, they wanted a place to unwind, and they all like to skateboard. So they had brought this ramp down here to try to be able to do it. They
Yeah.
had found the ramp and found the wood, and they just put it together here on this because they thought, hey, there's no traffic down here. Like, they're not there trying to like upend or doing anything or graffiti or anything like that. Like, not doing a thing. So of course, the HOA is flaming mad. They're standing out there and they want to talk to a supervisor. I had recognized one of the kids from dealing with them before. Uh, I'm like, well, I know these kids are probably from the treatment facility down the street. And they're like, well, we didn't know there was a treatment facility down the street. And I'm like, yeah. And I know this kid because they're trying to get help with their drug dependency issue. And I go, if they move the skate ramp, can we just make this all go away? Like, and they're like, well, we want them to clean it up and this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go down and talk to the counselor at the place, at the treatment facility. And I went down there and they're like, oh yeah, we've got room in our parking lot. If the kids want to bring it down here, we're glad to have them skate down here. Like, we would rather have them in closer to the facility anyway.
Yeah.
Cause so the kids worked it out. Like, I just told them, I'm like, hey, here's what's going on. First of all, appreciate you for trying to get help with your drug dependency issue. Number one thing. Secondly, these community members, they're concerned. They think that there's criminal activity out here. They don't understand that skateboarding is not a crime. I feel like I'm Tony Hawk or one of these people talking about it.
I had one of those T-shirts in middle schools.
Yeah. They ended up out there, like, they were cleaning up, and I took some pictures because I knew I was going to get a complaint, probably because I spoke sternly to the homeowners association person about not being carrying around their AR-15 and basically having them slung when dealing with people, and that they had no enforcement activity. Like, they can't go out and enforce anything, especially when they have a weapon on them. Probably not a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
plan. And I didn't get a complaint about that. But those are the unsung things where the cul-de-sac was clean. The kids were great. The community members felt like we did the right thing there as a sheriff's office that day. Like, we took care of their problem. And that was good community relations. Those are the things that we need to be acknowledging in public
Yeah.
for people. And I know a lot of people, one of the things I'm getting to speak at the Smile conference in September, which is social media and law enforcement. And here's my shameless plug. If you're in social media in your agency, please sign up for that. You can go to the link in my information that's going to be in the show notes here. But please come to that conference in Asheville, North Carolina, because they're going to be talking about it. That's the easiest way to reach out to your community. And the easiest way to find new recruits for your agency is talking about what you're doing and having those type of positive things. Like, they don't want to see you being a cowboy all day long. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
People are tired of seeing Bearcats and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's very cool, but they don't want to think that they live in that type of community. They want to watch that on Friday night TV or on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah. That's
They
a
want
faraway metropolis, not their.
correct. They don't want that down the street from them.
With that problem solving, that specific example that you used, you think about it too. Half dozen or a dozen kids out there skating.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I would imagine if they're in a drug treatment facility as kids, as teenagers, they've had some type of impact or some type of, whether positive or negative impact or contacts with law enforcement.
Hmm.
So now you have a boss out there helping them out, getting their ramp, defending them, saying how
Hmm.
they're in the right and solving their problems and getting their ramp moved. Now you have a half dozen or a dozen advocates of, wait a second, this is what police actually do and not arrest me for weed or take me to jail or separate me from my parents. So I think that's a huge impact too. I like the idea of social media and law enforcement. And I'm probably going to get beat up over this, from some of the old schoolers, but that's how people receive their news nowadays
Hmm.
for the most part. And also, I believe that the social media can have a huge impact if they highlight stories like what you just said
Hmm.
and it's authentic and it's happening at the moment. But this staged, this is what we're doing today
Yes.
and TikTok videos and, today we're riding with so and so. These staged things, first of all, if you're in the first responder disciplines, you could see it. It's staged. It's
Hmm.
staged. It's inauthentic. It's garbage. And I see it all the time and I cringe. And I'm
Right.
like, that's not how this works. Like, I know that dude. That dude hadn't done a traffic stop in 25 years. That
Right.
dude you're not even carrying handcuffs. What are you doing? You've got, your public information officers out there taking pictures. Like, who's taking the pictures, who's writing the scripts. And when you see stuff like that, it makes me cringe. It turns me off. And I'm like, dude, this is a joke. But you
Well,
get the actual people doing the jobs out there saying, hey, I met this kid today and, I helped him find his bike.
mhm,
And I will say this that the men and women that I worked with and when I was working out here, the acts of kindness, dipping into their own pockets to buy groceries for a mom and her children because they didn't want them standing on a street corner panhandling. Yeah, you could just tell them, hey, kick rocks. Don't want to get you hit, don't want you to get hit by a car. But instead they said, hey, you can't be out here. You're going to get hit by a car. We don't want that. What's going on? And then confirming that that's actually what's happening.
mhm,
They gave the mom and the 2 boys a ride home and started talking to neighbors. The neighbors were like, "Yeah, her husband lost her job 3 weeks ago. He just got a job. He's not gonna get paid for 2 weeks. She just found out she's terminal with cancer." They've got these 2 young boys. These 2 deputies, it was a field trainer and his recruit. Now, if you've been a law enforcement recruit or a fire recruit, you know that you don't have enough money to go out and buy groceries for somebody else
right.
and you're probably going to be eating spaghettios or half price lunches at Chipotle or something like that. Whoever's on the plan, and if as a younger officer, still you may not be doing that. But these 2 dudes, they left there and they told me they were going to be out of service at Walmart for a little bit. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're getting lunch or something. Who knows? I didn't question it because these guys weren't slackers. Those 2 dudes went and spent $300 of their own money and bought food for this family.
Mhm,
Now this is going back to 2015, 16 timeframe, and, groceries were much cheaper, so $300 bought a lot of food,
yeah,
and they went back and they had these parents in tears. The whole neighborhood was in tears. The neighborhood passed the hat to now help out their neighbors, and they're like, "We didn't know the deputies did
mhm,
this." And, I found out, I was like, "Hey, dude, why were you guys gone for so long? And you put yourself back out of that house. What's going on? Is there anything I need to know about?"
mhm,
They're like, "Oh, no, well, we did this. We felt bad." I'm like, "Bro, this is what it is. That's leadership modeling good behavior. That's your people having empathy and serving their community.
right,
And man, I could write a book about those times that I've experienced with my personnel or heard about or even, have taken part in myself. It's just those are the things that need to be talked about. And
yeah,
man, I love that. I think that's one of the larger things that I miss about the actual work, being able to help and see that you're helping right then and there,
right.
making a difference. So
I
that's cool.
look
I'm
in
glad
that.
you brought that up.
Well, I'll just tell you this, the only letter of commendation I've ever gotten from my agency, the only award I've ever won was from another agency where I was on a task force, but the only thing I've gotten from my agency has been I went to call for service, elderly man was hearing weird noises in the basement around like the week before Thanksgiving. And I love battleships and Navy ships and things like that. My grandfather was in the Navy during World War II. And this gentleman had a big model of the Missouri in his house. And so I just talked to him about that, and he told me about his time serving on the Missouri on the battleship. And at that time, my kids were smaller. I was a rookie, so it was back in 2011 and or maybe 2012, I forget. But I went back on. We were delivering food for people on Thanksgiving. That's what my family did at that time. And we were doing that. Well, we just went to the Boston market and bought the guy food because I had asked him if he was doing anything for Thanksgiving. And he's like, nope. And I just went back with my kids, and we knocked on the front door and entered. He remembered me from being there a couple days ago because people only remember your uniform,
Yeah.
but he remembered me. And I just said, thank you for your service, your military service. And we just wanted to drop this food off for you. And, these are my two kids. We're just out here on Thanksgiving. And that's what we did. And his family called in a few months later or a few weeks later. And I got a comment. I got a letter of letter of what is it sitting here on my
Commendation.
letter of commendation. So I'm very proud about that. There are more cops that are doing that kind of thing on a daily basis
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
around the country,
That they are
especially in
arresting
these.
people.
Correct. And we're making changes. We see people on the very worst day. And I also I think about the 1970s and being a cop in the 1970s and thinking about all those cop shows I used to watch when I was a little boy. And Chips was my favorite.
I was going to say
And
Chips had to be there.
yeah, Chips, I still watch Chips to this day, Doug. Like when I need to feel good about law enforcement, I put Poncho John on. And so I look at what they're doing and looking at like some of the things that they have to deal with, even on that show that was written in, 1975, 1976, 1977. The comments that they get on that show are the same comments that I would get if I went and worked patrol tonight here in Centennial, Colorado. So, you know, law enforcement hasn't changed that much. I actually had my team knows I'm a prolific reader, and I'm down doing some rounds around the jail last week. And one of the deputies is like, LT, I found this book, and it's got some jacked up things in it from like 1993. It was a um, American ACA, and I forget what they stand for. It's American Corrections Association. This book about it was a collaborative book of different authors that were doing different topics, and some of them were like how to handle certain issues in a corrections facility. But one of the areas was how to advance your career in corrections.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it had like 9 or 10 points. I don't remember every one of the points, but I actually took the book up to briefing and I read those things. And I go, we're doing these things. But one of them was one of the things was basically be curious, not judgmental. Be Ask questions and don't just assume you know the answers. And this is something written from in 1993 or later that this is not new. Like what you and I talk about, what I talk about in leadership is not new. It's been happening from really since written word. We need to lead ourselves well. And the other thing is if people are listening to this content and they find value in it, then please find a way to support myself and you for creating this content because our content doesn't come up for free. Like our time is not for free. And we want to continue to go on with this. This is the same thing we need to say with our communities. If you like the policing services that you're getting, you need to pour some more effort into this.
Yeah.
And comes down to leadership training. So I talk a little bit about getting more leadership training in my article. All people at higher rank see is how am I going to pay the overtime and how am I going to get these people to this training? Because the training, they might not be able to have it at their office. This training, if you get good leadership training, it's going to cost money and it should cost money. Okay. I know there are plenty of organizations out there that are 501(c)(3)s and are trying to give away some really good training. That's great. I'm not dogging on those organizations, but there are very few organizations out there that are able to do that because they do have to pay people like you and I to come in to do that because we've spent the money to enhance our education and take time to research these topics and from that standpoint policing organizations and the community, if they want leaders, they're going to have to pay for leaders to come in. Now, the great thing is one of the papers I wrote when I wrote my True Bold paper was a whole community action plan for my community where it was like interactive leadership, where the community came together, they decided, and we brought great, this is a fictional thing that I'm writing about, but the event would be we brought people in like Brene Brown to speak to our community. And while she was here speaking to our community, she would be able to come in and talk to our people. She was a social worker. She understands what the things is, but we could pool all our resources because she cost $30,000 to bring to the community.
Well, I would
We
thought
might
I
have
would
to,
more than that.
probably more, we have to, we're going to have to pool money to bring these people in. To bring Simon Sinek in is going to cost money. To bring, whoever, Mel Robbins in is going to cost money. So we need to be pooling it because our community wants to see us as leaders. They look to these elected officials as leaders in the community. They're missing the whole thing of I'll get on my soapbox here for a second, but most of these politicians are just listening to who's putting money in their pockets, which is usually the lobbyists of whatever organization that is trying to get something, trying to get an IKEA to come to your community, or trying to get a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or whatever type of thing. But sales tax revenue is down all over the country, all over the country. And people are not buying houses like they have. So it's going to affect counties
Yeah.
also. It's people are not spending money because there's not money to be spent. So we have to come up with creative things, and having people like you and I that can sort of translate in between. Because I think that's been the hardest thing for me, is to turn off the cop, like turn it on when it's needed and turn it off. And sometimes that means in my office too, when I'm dealing with other cops, I need to be the leader. I need to be Matt Davis, the leader of people, not just Matt Davis, the leader of cops, because we need to have some empathy there. And
Yeah.
I need to leverage myself. I need to put myself out there because leading is not free.
Let's just say money's not an issue.
Mhm.
Let's just, in a perfect world, money is not an issue. You have a large agency with a large budget, and they have the money to spend on that type of training.
Mhm.
But let's just say that toxic leadership or substandard or not non-high functioning leadership is an issue, but it's a blind spot for them. They think that everything is going fine because the organization is running as it always has. Or, you even mentioned it in one of your previous articles that, organizations and even the entire discipline will preach, we're just one big family, but you're not treated like a family member. Let's just say that type of leadership is like, well, we don't need leadership training because they learn from us. This is handed down generationally. And once we do the anoint you and tap you on the forehead, you're now a leader in a position of positional authority. Should be intuitive to do what we do. And of course, you and I both know you start getting dull copies of dull copies in leadership, and it just gets
Mhm.
worse and worse and more toxic. What do you say to the leader who just doubles down and saying, well, you're just a lieutenant from someplace in Colorado. What do you know about leadership? Or the other dude in a flowered shirt on this podcast is a disavowed lieutenant from a large agency. And, what does he know about leadership?
Mhm.
We don't have a problem here. What would your answer be to them to inspire them or to show it to them that yes, you do have an issue and you should invest in the training of your personnel?
I immediately want to, when you say that, I immediately want to defend myself, right?
I do too.
And so I'm taking a deep breath. I'm using
Good.
some of my own training.
Good, because I had to
Uh,
stop talking because I was about to fly into a tirade.
right. I would just tell them that we're probably just not a style matchup. Like that's I think there's power in no. And I had this happen a few weeks ago. I had the PIO from my agency come in, and they're like, "You've got a really compelling story. We really like to highlight it." And I just looked at them and I said, "I don't think my personal I don't want my personal I don't think our my organization and True Bold and what I'm doing with Matt Davis Speaks aligns with what's going on here at the sheriff's office." I just flat out told them that. And from that standpoint, it's about it. I don't want to I don't want to waste time on those people.
Yeah. I don't
To
think
be
you can
real
solve a
honest,
problem if they don't realize that there's a problem.
correct. And I will just keep doing what I'm doing, and it'll happen from the bottom up. Because for me, I think the perception has been that I went through mental health crisis and I got a little Looney Tunes. I think is what people think at my place, where I had, the jury was out. Like, hey, I had to raise my hand and say I needed mental health help. I went and did that and did the work, and I'm still doing the work on that. But I just start. I don't want to let other people control me
Mhm.
from that standpoint. And like immediately when I get that emotion when I had to take that deep breath, I know it's getting in, it's hitting up, bouncing up against my boundary for me as Matt Davis. And if you're going to ask me those questions, I'm glad to like have a good conversation with you about those topics, but it's probably just not a style matchup. Like, hey, we've introduced each other. That's sort of how I feel about when I put in for speaking events around the country. You know, you fill out all these
Mhm.
forms and you send a headshot and you send your stuff in. I just feel I just taken to the point of I'm just continuing to introduce myself, because as long as I'm my authentic self, I can't tell my story wrong.
Yeah.
I've invested a lot in myself in the last 3 years. You know, not just from a mental health standpoint and putting the time in there, but I'm an avid reader. I mean, I don't know very many people that read 19 leadership books in 1 year, and you know, I'm on pace to do that or more this year. I'm trying to be an author, and I'm also a full time student,
I was gonna
and
say the investment
and
you've done in yourself and in your education and professionally, I mean, bro, you have reached a powerful level of self-awareness just with the last statement you made. It's impressive, man. So,
and you know, we'll go back to my wedding. You know, we had, you know, it was a drop in before, and then we had people over, like the people that are closest to us. We had back over our house, and we shared our vows with those people. Like, we stood up on our hearth in our living room because it was pouring rain. We were planning on doing it outside, but you know, grand plans never happened. It was like Florida type of rain here in Colorado, which never happens. And, you know, from that standpoint, it was like we had not discussed what we had written down on paper. I had like 3 pages. She had another couple of pages of stuff, but we said the exact same story. It was very similar, because in the first moments when we, like in the first 45 minutes we knew each other, we had already talked about what were important boundaries to us. And we were having that discussion. And I knew when I left that here's someone that is powerfully knows about boundaries and had thought about that. And that's where I was, because I was actually working on making sure I was maintaining my boundaries, because my toxicity was all around me not following my boundaries and not staying in my control circle and all those good things. So being able to stand up there and share with her and be able to like choke back the tears, because I really wanted to get that out, because I wanted all the important people in my life to hear what I had to say about this other amazing human being that I'm making these vows to. And I think that is what people want about their organization. I think that I think as a CEO of a or chief of police or a sheriff or whatever, you want to make sure, because it's not about legacy for me.
mhm.
This has nothing to do about legacy. I want to make people's lives better. And I just want to be a support to them. And I hope they see value in that,
It's a
and
powerful
want
why,
to bring
man.
me and be able to bring me into their organization. And I don't know, like I never know when I have a meeting with a CEO what that's going to be like, because they either like me or they don't like me. Like that's I'm okay with that. It's sort of like clearing a building, isn't it? Much more, you know, when you hit the first few doors and they're all locked. When you're doing a building clearance, you're like, oh, this is great. This is going to go really quickly. That's how I feel like a no is. It's just another locked door that I can go on past.
Yeah, that's
And
easy.
it's easy. It's easy. And I don't need to spend my effort. But I do want to, you know, I am trying to find that, you know, that you are affecting change when you have people that actually get on there in the comments and sort of troll you. And I want to create a conversation, like with my article and some of the posts that I'm getting a great
Yeah,
interaction
yeah,
with all those things, but I want to create a conversation. And I know that there are plenty of people that might not, that might think I'm hokey pokey or whatever, or hocus pocus, or this is all like, I can tell you from a person that used empathy incorrectly, I am now using empathy in a very correct way with people. And if you want to go, like, I would just simply say to a leader, if you want to take a 2 week vacation and know that you're not going to get called on the carpet when you get back with a long list of things that your team fucked up, you need to be like, you need to follow what I told you in this article. If you do that, you're going to come back and there's not going to be, you're not going to get called to the captain's office, chief's office, whatever office. Your people are just going to handle business, and it's going to feel strange for the first few times, because you're going to have empowered your team to be able to do the job that they've already been sworn in to do. Like, they've done the same programs you have,
mhm.
and they have passed probably higher standards. Now that's the other thing is everybody wants to talk about standards being lower, but there's more and more education
Yeah.
required now
Oh
than
yeah.
ever before in law enforcement. So like, ask yourself what the hell is going on. I think right now, I'm reading Let Them, the
Be
Let Them
curious,
theory.
not judgmental.
Mel Robbins talks about the 5 whys in her book. And she, like, when she gets upset, she asks herself 5 times why it makes it upset. And the example that she uses is about a friend of hers that has an overweight husband that doesn't seem to want to exercise. And after that, they got to that 5th why. The 5th why is the wife was afraid that her husband was going to have a heart attack and die and leave her. If we start with that authentic conversation of, hey, spouse, I'm concerned because you don't seem to be concerned. You're getting older. You don't seem to be like, let's have an authentic conversation. If we're loving ourselves and loving the people around us, we should be able to get closer to them. And these conversations should bring us closer, not further apart.
Mhm.
And when you go into an organization, when you hear, well, I can just leave anytime, or I'm just counting down, I got it on my phone or my watch or whatever, how many days till I can retire, you probably should leave.
Yeah.
You probably should leave. Like, for your organization, especially if you're command level, if you're a supervisor and you're on the countdown to leaving, and it's not part of an orchestrated plan, and you hate going to work every day, then do us all a favor and quit your job today.
Do yourself the favor.
Right. Because you're not managing yourself. Like, find what's going to empower you to go be your best self. That's what I love about debrief and some of those other things that you and I are also involved in, is talking with people that are taking that step to get out of law enforcement
It's
and want to
scary,
get
man. It's
right.
scary. Can
Right.
be.
It can be. But we know a lot of people that have been very successful at it.
Mhm.
But I love law enforcement, and I'll just tell you, I don't know if I have another rank in me. I know I don't have that at my place, because the next place is a political appointee, and I'll just tell you right now, I don't want to be a political appointee. That's not my thing. I don't want to do that. It seems like a lot of groupthink that happens once you get to that level, and everybody's worried about keeping their jobs every 4 years. So I'm at the highest assessed level that I can get to in my organization, and I'm just fine with that.
I think that's probably the best thing for you and your organization too, because you still have troop contact. You know,
Mhm.
they still get the best parts of Matt Davis and the leadership. They can see that. So in effect, by doing the things that you're doing leadership training. So
Yeah.
when your younger troops and those coming up, they see that the way you make decisions, and they're brought in on your process and how you manage and do things. When they experience something later in their career, they're like, hey, I know what this looks like. I remember this.
Well, we
Lieutenant
all
Davis did
know,
this.
right? We all know what works, Doug. Like,
Mhm.
we've all had supervisors. Like, I look at the list that I have of what works, which is like, the first thing is shield their people. That should, like, immediately, you think of probably sergeants. I think of one of my narcotics sergeants just right off the bat. I
Mhm.
think of my narcotics lieutenant right off the bat. Show up when needed. Like, show up when needed. Like, if there's a call for service that a lieutenant is required to go to, show up.
Mhm.
Make quick decisions. Like, not make quick decisions like, I'm going to blow up and be an idiot,
No, be
but
decisive.
be decisive and say, we're doing this and we're doing that. And it gets a little harder when you're a lieutenant, because you want to give your sergeants enough time to make that decision. But there comes a point where you just got to make a decision, stick with it, fight for your people. Fight for your people. Like, don't go in the supervisor's meeting and your co-lieutenant that's on the other side of the week just trashes all your people and went about something that you told them to do. Take
Mhm.
responsibility and say, no, that was my call. So don't have a problem with my people. You can have a problem with me, because the buck stops here. Extreme ownership. You love Jocko. He's always talking about, he's going to be the first one to get in trouble as the leader, not have it followed out.
As you
Stay
should.
humble. Stay humble is another thing. Be humble. Like, yeah, you're a lieutenant, but be humble about being a lieutenant. It's a lot of work to be a lieutenant. It's a lot of work to get there. And there's a lot of things you have to do. And that's why there's fewer of us as they get further up in the ranks. Even sergeants, there's fewer of us. Ask better questions. Ask better questions of your people. Like, I ask 4 standard questions when I meet with people. What's your why? What are your goals? How can I help you with them? And how do you define trust? Those are my 4 questions I ask everybody, and I get amazing answers. And if we've all been seasoned interrogators or investigators, or we like to say we were the guy that they called in to be the closer. We love doing open-ended questions, but somehow we
Mhm.
lose that when we become supervisors, because all our questions end up being closed in, or we're doing open-ended questions to draw somebody into admitting they parked in a handicapped parking spot and they didn't have they shouldn't have. Okay. And then remember the street. I have one of my good friends, I rode with them a few weeks ago as because I'm hoping that I get rotated out of the jail here in the next probably 12 months. So I'm keeping up with riding with lieutenants on the road. And I rode with him and he was my phase 3 training officer. He was my partner in narcotics. He's my best friend, one of my best friends. And we're riding around and I'm seeing things. I'm like, hey, we need to roll up. We need to like jump out on these people. And he looks at me and he goes, I can tell you didn't work the road very long because you want to get out. I want to get out and do something, right? And I'm like, hey, let's go cover that deputy. And he's like, but we're gonna have to write a report. I'm like, well, I don't care about writing a report. Like, okay, hey, we came, we saw, we did whatever because I want to be out there doing it. And he just looked at me and he goes, that's one of those things that you only work the road for like a little over a year and a half before you got promoted to onto a specialty team, and where he worked the road for like 7 to 8 years before he got promoted to a specialty team. And he goes, my time, I'm done rolling up on all these things. Like the least amount of paper I want to take it, and I understand exactly where he's coming from.
Yeah,
But remember where you're coming from.
yeah, no,
Right?
I get the message. I had a problem with that too. When I got my platoon, I was like, I can go to anything that I want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the entire district.
Mm-hmm.
The puppet master. One of the things I never wanted to do was to create work for my personnel. So the
Yes.
deal is if you catch them, you clean them. So if you want
Yes.
to go out and you want to be fun guy and go poaching at 3 o'clock in the morning, first of all, I'll be the first one to smack you in the face. If it's
Mm-hmm.
quiet, no shenanigans at 3. Let it
Yes.
ride, bro. People are doing reports.
Correct.
Let it
Correct.
ride. Find a
Right.
place and you know, control your businesses, look for the burglars, but when you're done, be
Right.
done.
Correct.
So I'm not going out in the witching hours and looking for stuff. But if I found something, I'm going to work it. I'm going to write the report. I'm going to need you to transport because I don't have a cage in my car. But other than that, you catch them, you clean them. And I felt so bad one time. We had a jewelry store that had been burglarized, and I'm sitting out front doing a report, and I went to back up and blind spot. There's a very small parking stanchion. It was
Yes.
concrete, and it just barely creased the back quarter panel. I'm like, man, that's it. I'm gonna lose my car for 5 days. I'm gonna have to park it, drive my personal vehicle to work. Like this just sucks. So I called the sergeant and I said, hey, bro, I backed into a parking stanchion. I need you to come over here and the blue team, and because that's we capture it in a blue
Yeah.
team. And he's like, all right, bro, I'm on my way. He got there and I hit send. I said, I just sent you an email. He goes, what'd you send me? I said, I sent you the blue team, my interview, the synopsis, and the pictures are coming as soon as I download them off my phone. He said,
Mm-hmm.
what? I said, yeah, I feel horrible for giving you this work. I just did the blue team for him. So,
Yeah.
I would go out, I would foot chase. I would track with K9 as a lieutenant. And man, it was a lot of great fun. I rolled my ankle in a foot chase, but it was all good times, man. I loved that part of the job, just being there to again be there when you're needed because you always have an opportunity to mentor,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're sitting in the office, you're going to miss those opportunities.
Yeah.
So it was
I
fun.
like that. I love it when deputies that have worked on my team and I've seen them go to patrol and then they come back and they're like booking somebody into the jail. I love to see that. And I'll always go out and talk with them and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And a couple weeks ago, one of the deputies that was on my last year started on my team and then she transitioned out to patrol. I'm like, "Hey, where'd they get you? Are you out of training?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm solo." She looks at me and she goes, but I got District 1 and it's just where old people die. And she's like, I've got all these things and I look at her and I go, I love District 1. Like that's like my jam. I got a bunch of when I would get more felony arrests over there. And she gets done with a report and I'm like, hey, are you just can I show you some areas where you can if you work these areas, I guarantee you'll get a felony arrest. Like guaranteed, like in the next week. I didn't like oversell it or anything, but I go, if you just work these 2 streets and you just look for some traffic violations, you're going to get some people because I showed her on the map. I go, they use this street north and south because they know that we're on these other roads and it's not patrolled. And I was joking with her. I'm like, this is where the criminal superhighway is in district 1. And I go, then work this east to west road. just do it. Just see what's going on. And then like 3 hours later, she's back with a felony arrest. She's like, I got to, and I go, where'd you get it? And she goes, I went right down to where you told me to go work. And I pulled, one of the first people I pulled over had a felony warrant.
Well, there you
And
go.
then she found some drugs in the car. That she, that's what lieutenants need to be doing. Like us with experience and know
Yeah.
area very well, like let's show them to go out there and do it instead of just going out and doing it. I don't want to be seen as a micromanager. And I think a lot of times that's what we end up being seen as, because I need to let people, I can watch them from afar. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't know if
Yeah.
we have unmarked cars as lieutenants, so I can sort of sneak around if I want. And I want them doing their thing. Like I wanted them doing their thing. And then when they get in something really big, I want to come in and be the calming force that brings the rest of the troops when we need to bring them,
Yeah.
and be able to do that. And I want to make sure that everybody is goes home safe and nobody gets arrested, you know, and no one breaks the law. I mean, that's just where it comes down to from a
That's it.
lieutenant standpoint. And I want to make sure that I'm not creating more risk for the organization, because I do, you know, we're at this pivot point where I have to think about the organization. And then that's when it comes
Yeah.
down to like transparent conversations. And I forget the article if I did or not, but I don't think I did in this one, but I think I might do it in another article coming up. But talking about how you can have those conversations with people. It might have been in a post where you want to be transparent, but you say, hey, I can only tell you this much. But they help that's very helpful for people. They can't keep hearing the message over and over and over, because it just becomes like Charlie Brown, like
Yeah.
the
It's just noise.
phone on
Yeah.
Charlie Brown. Burr, 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 burr. It just turns into that. And they don't want to hear you're not really a leader, because you're not really trying to shield them. You're not trying to fight for them. You can't just say no all the time. You need to
Yeah.
say no a lot less, and have them come up with good ideas and put it on paper and send it up and let somebody else say no. I mean, there is other people to say no other than
Yeah.
just because something makes my captain uncomfortable and he would rather me handle it at my level with, you know, why I think it's a good idea. That's why it came up through me.
Yeah.
And, you know,
That's good
hey, I'm
stuff.
sorry. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. So, I mean,
The bigger conversation is, why does that make you uncomfortable? Is this something that now you have to deal with, or was it a bad
right,
idea?
right. Yeah, from that standpoint, leadership is a big, you never know what's going to happen, Doug,
No, it's
with
fun.
leaders.
It's wonderful.
And there's a struggle out there for sure.
Yeah, there is. I think, I saw it in a post, your organizational culture is not what's on your website. It's how your people feel on Sunday. I think if you ask that question, you will get a good feeling of where your organization is. But
I agree with that.
let's wrap it up, buddy. Where can people find you? Or well, first, do you have any parting thoughts?
Well, my parting thought, I would just say my parting thought is be bold enough to look at your team and say, I'm trying to be the best leader I can. Uh, if you're listening to this podcast and you come to this point, you've done 99.999 more work this week about leadership than most of the people that you work with that are leaders. And I just want to encourage you and say thank you for staying with us. And thank you for listening to a couple of guys that are losing their hair in Hawaiian shirts.
Hey, man, settle down
And
with the hair thing.
sorry, you have a lot more than I do. But, you know, just thank your listeners. Like I appreciate that they want to listen to a couple of guys talk about leadership and talk about their life's journey and what's going on there. So I just want to encourage them to all be able to lead boldly, build boldly, and grow boldly. And they can find me. The link will be in my bio to my link tree, and that links off to both mattdavidspeaks.com. If you would, that's my speaking area. So if you would like me, if you see me and want to see if we could align with it, our organizations could align and collaborate in something, please reach out to me there. There's a form that you can fill out there about doing a speaking request. I would love to come out to your organization and speak. True Bold, that is true-boldness.com. Please go there if you're looking for consulting help, if you're looking for coaching help, if you're looking for leadership training. That's the place where you go and you can reach out to me. And I'm a solo shop right now, but I'm hoping to have more people on that website going forward, probably toward the end of the year. People like Doug and other people in the wellness space will probably be on there if they want to collaborate with me on that end. But that's just going to be a resource area for all kinds of leadership. And hopefully we're going to have some online content soon um, out there. I am just about to release a small ebook about building your LinkedIn as a law enforcement officer. So we talk a lot about the myths of law enforcement, of why law enforcement um, shouldn't be on LinkedIn. We give some examples. There's also an additional, if you like that, that's going to be some paid for content, but there's going to be a toolkit also that'll be out there for purchase as well. So that'll be there. And then check me out at the Smile Conference. If you're in the social media at your agency as a first responder, please check out smileconference.com. They are offering a deal right now where you can go ahead and sign up for the conference today and not pay till 30 days before the conference. So that is going to be on there. So please do that. And please follow me on LinkedIn. That's on my link tree. I am trying to get to 20,000 followers before the end of the year, and I would love each one of you to be part of that if you're not already part of the 12,000 people that are following me today.
I'm going to highlight that LinkedIn thing. I'm definitely going to get your ebook in the toolkit. But yeah, you are a master at the LinkedIn, and I love it. So I would highly encourage anybody who's listening to us still go find you and at least get a hold of the articles that you put out. And you putting out great stuff, man. So I do appreciate you. Thank you. First time actually wearing my Hawaiian shirt. I've had it hanging in the closet for a while, so I dusted this off just special for you today.
Well, I want to, hopefully, you and I are going to get to meet up at either a conference or somewhere where we're in the same place, and we will both have our Hawaiian shirts on and we can take some pictures. I would really like that and
Well,
be able to hang out in person and have a beer.
Well, I have not mentioned this to anyone yet, but I will be speaking at Project Lifesaver, their conference in Orlando in August. So I don't know that you're going to make it this far, but I will also be speaking. I'm closing out the second day after John Kelly at Wounded Blue, their 2025 summit in September, late September in Vegas. So I'll be speaking there. I'll be there the entire week. And if you make it to Wounded Blue, I will certainly be sure to pack my Hawaiian shirt.
Okay, we'll pack your Hawaiian. Well, we'll see. I don't know about what me and Las Vegas are one of those things where it doesn't like me sometimes, and I don't like it sometimes.
Well, I
So,
don't know. I've never been.
okay.
So I've been to
I like to
Nevada,
go for
but never been to Vegas.
I like to go for college football games. It's got one of the best stadiums in the country with the Reliance Stadium to see football.
Well, if you
That's
make
for
it out
sure.
to Wounded Blue, there's a ton of speakers. I mean, it's a varsity lineup. I don't know how I made the cut, but it's going to be quite the week. It looks great. So yeah, man, hope to see you all there.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me again, and hopefully we do this a third time and maybe next season.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tell the Story. I hope you found our conversation with Matt Davis insightful and inspiring. If you'd like to connect with Matt, visit his website at trueboldness.com or check him out on Linktree. His links will be in the show notes. Explore his leadership insights and consider his impactful presentations for your organization. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. Your support helps us to reach more people with these important conversations. To connect with me, visit DougWhiteOfficial.com for all my links. Thanks again to Polestar Coffee, a veteran-owned and operated craft coffee roaster in Melbourne, Florida. Fuel your mission with Polestar Coffee. Use code THISSTORY at checkout to receive 10% off at polestarcoffee.com. Please leave a comment on this episode wherever you stream. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's just feedback, guest suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover. Thank you for tuning in to Tell This Story. Remember, the way forward starts here. We'll see you next time.